Same starting money, same 13 years. One of these is a portfolio that many people would call conservative. The other portfolio is one that many people would say is risky. I'll let you guess which one is which. That's a $150,000 difference. And the bond portfolio is not just the one that had a lower value, it's also the one that had the largest maximum drawdown. Also, I found a catch. About a third of that bigger number isn't what it looks like. And I'll show you exactly where it comes from. Then I'm going to do what actually matters. Take $500,000, pull a rising paycheck out of it every month for 13 years, and then see which version of that portfolio is still standing at the end. Hey guys, the information presented in this video is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as investment advice or a recommendation of any security or strategy. I am not acting as your investment advisor. Options trading involves substantial risk, including the possible loss of principal, and is not appropriate for all investors. Any strategies discussed are examples only and may not be suitable for your financial situation. Past performance does not guarantee future results. Okay, so here's the setup. You're in your 60s. You've got somewhere between $500,000 and $2 million. And you're at the point where this pile of money has to start producing a paycheck for you. Every plan you've ever been shown splits that money into two segments: growth and safety or income. The safe half has one job. It isn't there to make you rich. It's there specifically to not fall apart, to be safe when the markets fall, when that growth segment of the portfolio does fall. So that way you don't have to sell growth at the bottom to pay your electric bill. So let's look at how that safe segment actually performed. This is the total bond market, BND, over the last 13 and a half years, compounded at 1.79% a year. And at its worst in 2022, it fell 18.5%. Let me put that in dollars because percentages get argued with and dollars don't, as we've talked about. On a $150,000 bond position, an 18% decline is about $28,000 gone from that part of your portfolio that existed specifically so that nothing would be gone. That's the problem I wanted to dig into. If there are times when bonds can carry equity-like risk, is there a better way to do it? So here's the exact test. $500,000, 70% in the S&P 500, SPY for growth, and then 30%, $150,000 as the segment we're testing. Instead of bonds, that segment sells cash-secured puts on SPY. Every cash-secured put is fully backed by cash. No margin, no leverage, and the cash earns treasury bill rates while it sits there. Now with this test, I had two targets. Number one, I wanted to cap the maximum drawdown at 10%. Hard ceiling. And then if possible, I wanted to generate 7.5% in compound annual growth rate from that segment. I want you to notice the order in which I did that. I set the loss or the max drawdown limit first, and then, if possible, I set the compound annual growth rate target. And if you flip it, if you go the other way around, if you start with growth, you're always going to find a strategy that meets your growth goals. But it can be difficult to find one that does that and does not have significant losses on the other side. Now, to test this properly, you need every single SPY or S&P 500 SPY option quote going back over a decade. You also need all the Greeks, you need to know the delta, and then of course you'll need an algorithm or a computer, unless you're going to do it yourself in Excel, which I do not recommend. You'll need a computer in order to run the calculations. Now, I used a platform called Scalarfield. What's pretty cool is that you can describe a test like what we're going to do right now in plain English, right? Just typing it out, and then it writes and runs the code against historical options chains. So starting off here, take a look at this starting prompt that I gave Scalarfield, right? I'm looking to build a retirement income strategy that is different than the traditional cash and bonds and growth type of strategy. What I'd like to do is test a strategy of selling SPY cash secured put options with a small percentage of a large cash account and then holding growth. My idea here would be 70% growth, 30% cash and options utilization. Let's assume the portfolio would be $500,000 with this utilization. Now, the hard part comes down to how much of my cash account I want to utilize for options. Here's where you come in. I need for you to identify the best SPY cash secured put option strategy based on the delta and based on the days to expiration. You can include management strategies such as exiting at a certain day remaining so that we don't have too much gamma risk, as well as, let me scroll down here, a VIX exit so that if the VIX changes too much from when we open the trade, we close it. I don't want the trade management to get too much more complicated than that though. because I want to be able to use it for average investors. You need to identify the days to expiration used as well as the delta. Since this is a retirement account, I want to make sure and minimize drawdowns in this section of the portfolio. Ideally, I'd like to have a compound annual growth rate of at least 7.5% and a max drawdown in this segment of no more than 10%. I want to make sure this strategy is back tested all the way back as far as we can go with options. Also, I'd like to have SPY be the growth ETF we have, and you can utilize BIL for the cash ETF if you'd like. And after I submitted that prompt here, you can see a lot of stuff happened in the background that required very little prompting from me. A ton of different stuff in here, working through the deltas, working through the different days to expiration, when to exit the trade, etc. So the first real question here was, how aggressive should the put options be? That's the delta, roughly how likely the option is to end up in the money. Higher delta, more premium, more risk. So I asked Scalarfield to run 5 versions across the full 13 and a half years, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30 delta. Every trade, every expiration, 13 years each. Now, all this analysis and all this data came back in like the amount of time it takes me to go make coffee, which is insane. And it really goes to show just how much things have changed over the years, because I used to do a lot of this stuff in Excel and it took me forever. And now it's very automated with AI. The 10 delta made 4% compound annual growth rate with a 6.25% drawdown. 15 delta, 4.8. 20 delta, 5.3. 25 delta, 6.21%, drawdown 9.2. And the 30 delta made the most, 6.55, but its drawdown was 11.15%. 30 delta really breaks the rule. 10% was the ceiling and it went through it, so it's out, no matter how good the returns look. And look at what you'd be buying here. Going from 25 delta to 30 gets you an extra 1/3 of 1% a year. On $150,000, that's about $510. And it costs you almost 2 additional points of drawdown, roughly $2,900 of extra pain at the worst moment. You're paying $3 of risk for every dollar of return. But here's the part I want you to actually remember. Look at the win rate column here. 10 delta won 94.6% of the time. It was right on 19 out of every 20 trades, and it finished dead last. 94% right, worst result on the board. Okay, so all of this landed with a base strategy. 25 delta, about 30 days out or 30 DTE trade, closing it at 7 days to expiration. Then I did what I like to do, which is I wanted to add variations and trade management techniques to see if we can make the numbers even better. 7 more variations, one at a time, each one a full 13-year run. Taking profits at 50%, take profits at 75%. Exit if the VIX jumps 25% or 50 or 100. Close at 5 days instead of 7 days, 10 days, 14 days. And the crazy part is every single one of those trade management techniques actually made the final result worse. And then I tested the big one, the one I think everyone thinks makes the most sense. The most popular filter in all of retail investing: only sell puts when SPY is above its 200-day simple moving average. Stay out when it's below. If you sell puts always, 6.2% a year, 9.2% drawdown. Filtered by the 200-day moving average, 4% a year, and a 13.89% drawdown. Read that again. The filter made the returns worse and it made the drawdowns worse. Almost 5 points worse. It cost $84,000 over that period. So we had a strategy that looked good. 6.21% compound annual growth rate per year with a maximum drawdown that's actually relatively small considering the type of strategy we're utilizing. But there was something I still wanted to flesh out, which is how much of this return was coming from cash. Remember, with cash secured puts, you have the ability to hold that cash and have it earn interest. And you have the ability, with most brokerages, to have that collateral for the puts also earn interest. So I typed that into Scalarfield, and I wanted it to make sure that it broke out how much of that was coming from interest of that return versus how much of it was coming from actually selling put options. And it confirmed here that the entire cash balance was earning interest every single trading day before opening a put, while it was open, on the put's closing day, every single time, and all the time between cycles as well. And here was the audit results. With collateral interest, the compound annual growth rate, as we know, was 6.21%. Without the interest, it would have only been 4.43%, a difference of 1.78% per year. Max drawdown went slightly up as well without an interest, from 9.2 to 9.76%. A total difference here of $69,870. So now the real question, not what's the compound annual growth rate or CAGR, because nobody retires on a CAGR. The question is, does this strategy actually pay a paycheck, and does the money last? Here was this final test that we ran. $500,000 starting balance. Pull out $25,000 in year one. That's 5%, and I'll come back to that number. Paid monthly, starting immediately. Every year, the payment rises with actual inflation, so that by 2026, that paycheck is $35,284 a year, run at 13 and a half years. Over that stretch, $392,486 walked out the door as income. Then I had Scalar Field run it 6 ways. 3 allocations, 80-20, 75-25, 60-40, each one twice. Once with bonds in the conservative sleeve, and once with the put strategy. 6 full withdrawal simulations, monthly distributions, annual rebalancing. And here were the results. The 80-20 allocation, the put options from SPY outperformed bonds, ending balance here nearly $200,000 difference. Yes, SPY puts did have a max balance decline slightly higher in this situation, 29.14 versus 27.58. Again, this is the combined portfolio, the S&P 500 growth section, as well as the either bonds BND or cash plus the put options. That was 80-20. 75-25 outperformed by $225,000 here, ending balance, with just a slightly higher max balance decline, and then 60-40 outperformed by over $300,000. And really what you can see here is that the outperformance here, as the allocation changes, the more you put to bonds or the more you put to cash and puts, the more the cash and put segment outperforms bonds. The part that matters more than everything else I've just shown you. Number one, there's no 2008 in this data. The single worst environment in modern history for selling puts is not in this test. Whatever the real drawdown is, assume it's worse than 9.2%. Number two, the recent years did in fact carry this strategy. From 2013 to 2019, this made 3.7% a year. From 2023 to today, 12%. That 6.2 headline is an average of 2 completely different worlds, and the good one is the recent one. 3, I didn't hit my target. I asked for 7.5% inside of a 10% drawdown, and the best that the strategy could find was 6.21%. Number 4, and this is the important one. This is not me telling you to go out and sell SPY put options and do not buy bonds. That's not it at all. Of course, selling puts has equity risk. It's similar. It's indirectly related to the S&P 500. Very similar risk, though the beta and the correlation is much lower. Number 5, that 5% withdrawal rate is above the standard 4% rule that many planners talk about and many people talk about in the investing community. I didn't use 5% to endorse it. I just used it as a stress test. And lastly, this backtest doesn't model for taxes, for assignment, margin requirements, any changes to the bid-ask spreads, broker collateral rules that might be different, and dividends on the S&P 500 side. All right, so what do we do with this? The growth plus cash and option strategy performed very well over this 13-year time frame, delivered better results and lower max drawdowns against this historical data. Does it mean that bonds could still have a place in your portfolio? Absolutely. Could it also mean that SPY put options might not be a good fit for you based on your risk tolerance and your risk capacity? Absolutely. Perhaps the biggest thing you could take away is there are alternative ways to structure your retirement income. You don't have to go based off of just holding stocks or just holding stocks and bonds. There are alternative ways to still have growth in your portfolio, even the very conservative side of your portfolio. If you want to run this test yourself with your own numbers, your own assumptions, etc., that's where Scalar Field comes in. And I'd rather you run your own test with your own assumptions rather than just base it off of mine. If you want to check out Scalar Field, there's a link down in the description below. Also, make sure to leave your 2 cents down in the comments below. I'm always interested to get your feedback. What did you like about this test? What do you think I missed out on? What were some opportunities there? I always love your feedback. That's all I got for you guys. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for watching.